We live in an era where solitude is seen as a problem to be avoided at all costs. From an early age, we are conditioned to believe that being alone means failure, rejection, or lack of worth. Social media reinforces this idea daily, bombarding people with images of perfect lives and schedules packed with social engagements. But is this perception accurate? Do we really need the constant presence of others to feel complete? The answer may surprise you. The fear of solitude is not natural. It is a social construct fueled by centuries of distorted beliefs. The problem is that this belief forces us to fill every moment of silence with distractions, superficial conversations, incessant notifications, and commitments we often don't even want to fulfill. This creates a vicious cycle where external noise prevents any real connection with oneself. The consequence? Anxiety, mental exhaustion, and an endless pursuit of external validation. When the presence of others becomes a requirement for well-being, their absence generates distress. And this is exactly where reflection is needed. Is the discomfort with solitude a sign that something is wrong? Or is it actually a clue that we are ignoring an essential aspect of our existence? To better understand this, we just need to observe how different cultures deal with solitude. In Japan, for instance, the concept of values empty spaces as moments of contemplation and creativity. In contrast, in Western culture, such moments are seen as wasted time. The result? A society that feels uncomfortable in its own company and turns to distractions to fill the void. But here's the secret: solitude is not a punishment, it's an invitation. An invitation to look inward, to listen to your own voice without interference, and to discover a source of peace that depends on no one else. The first step? Gradually reducing dependence on external stimuli. A good exercise is to set aside small periods of the day to be alone. No phone, no TV, no noise. The initial discomfort soon transforms into something liberating. Why are so many people afraid of being alone? The answer is simple. We were taught to see solitude as a problem when, in reality, it can be one of life's greatest gifts. When someone distances themselves, a cycle ends, or a period of isolation unexpectedly arises. The natural tendency is to see it as a sign of failure. But could these ruptures actually be making room for something much greater? How many times, after a difficult moment, has a new opportunity appeared out of nowhere? The universe has a peculiar way of organizing things, and solitude is often part of that process. Many great transformations begin precisely when solitude appears. People who are now global icons went through periods of seclusion before finding their true purpose. Steve Jobs distanced himself from everything and traveled to India seeking answers before creating Apple. Nikola Tesla preferred solitude to conceive his inventions. These periods were not punishments, but strategic pauses. The mistake is believing that being alone means being stagnant. On the contrary, it is in these moments that the mind organizes itself. Emotions stabilize, and ideas begin to emerge with clarity. Who hasn't made an important decision after taking time away from everything? The practice of valuing these moments can completely transform the way we see life. Instead of viewing solitude as a punishment, we can use it as a period of growth. A simple exercise for this is to set aside daily time to be with yourself without distractions, whether by walking without headphones, writing down thoughts, or simply observing your own breath. Small habits like these teach the brain to feel secure in its own company. Silence stops being uncomfortable and becomes an ally. The point is not to avoid solitude, but to learn how to embrace it. Those who master this art will never fear being alone again. Solitude is not just the absence of other people, it is a mirror, a reflection of everything we carry within us but often ignore because we are too distracted by the external world. When the noise fades and interactions decrease, the only thing left is the self. And that's where the true journey begins. Many people avoid this moment because they fear what they might find: repressed thoughts, insecurities, past memories, and difficult truths arise when there are no distractions to silence them. But what if, instead of running away, we use this phase as a healing process? The concept of solitude as a mirror is something that great spiritual masters have always emphasized. Philosopher and psychologist Jacobo Grinberg deeply studied human perception and believed that in silence we can see our beliefs and unconscious patterns with much greater clarity. He suggested that through isolation we can uncover the layers we have built over time: social masks, expectations we carry, and ideas we adopt without questioning. It is in this introspective state that we can truly distinguish between what resonates with us and what has merely been imposed by our environment. Those who want to use this mirror consciously can start with a simple practice: recording thoughts during moments of solitude. This could be through journaling or simply recording voice notes for oneself. The goal is not to judge, but to observe what arises in the mind without external interference. Is there a recurring pattern, a persistent fear? What kind of internal narrative is being reinforced? This process helps reprogram the way we perceive life. The more someone understands themselves, the more freedom they have to make choices aligned with their essence, without being influenced by fear or the need for approval. The world is always in motion. News breaks every second, notifications flood our screens, and the feeling that something always needs to be done has become the norm. In this rush, stopping can feel like a waste of time. But does this constant urgency not pull us further away from what truly matters? Introspection is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Creating a sacred space, an untouchable moment to look inward, is one of the greatest acts of self-respect. And it doesn't have to be mystical or complicated. It's simply about allowing oneself to exist without the constant need to react. This concept has deep roots in various traditions. Buddhist monks treat silence as an internal temple. Desert sages sought solitude as a way to connect with deeper truths. What all of them discovered is that humans need pauses to reorganize their thoughts, balance their emotions, and feel whole without depending on the external world. The problem is that modern society has developed an aversion to silence. And the result? Exhausted minds, superficial relationships, and a constant sense of dissatisfaction. Creating a sacred space in daily life does not require drastic changes. It can be as simple as starting the day without looking at the phone for the first 30 minutes, walking alone without headphones, or setting aside time each day to sit in silence. The key is to respect this moment. For some, this sacred space happens in meditation, for others, in writing, and for some, simply by watching the sky at the end of the day. The form does not matter, the intention does. When the world's noise fades, what remains is a clearer connection to one's own essence. No one likes to feel uncomfortable. Human nature instinctively seeks the path of least resistance, avoiding situations that cause distress or uncertainty. But what few realize is that it is precisely in these moments that the greatest transformations occur. Solitude, for example, can be uncomfortable at first because it forces us to confront thoughts that have been silenced by the rush of daily life. But what happens when someone chooses to move through this discomfort instead of running from it? The answer lies in the personal growth that only happens when we face what we have been avoiding. Many avoid solitude because it brings up doubts, insecurities, and difficult questions. But this process is essential. It's like training a muscle that has never been exercised before. At first it hurts, but over time it strengthens. The mind works the same way. Those who resist solitude out of fear of discomfort never develop a healthy relationship with themselves. This is why so many people jump from one distraction to another, never truly feeling at peace. But when someone has the courage to sit in their own internal silence long enough, something begins to change. The best way to deal with the discomfort of solitude is to treat it as training. At first, it may feel unsettling, but over time, the mind adapts. Small daily challenges help in this process. Eating alone without feeling the urge to check the phone, spending time away from social media, or even setting aside a weekend to be free from distractions. These moments build emotional resilience and teach that solitude is not something to be feared, but a natural state that can be deeply enriching. Those who find comfort in their own silence discover that true freedom is not about avoiding solitude, but about learning to use it as a tool for growth. Solitude has always been a subject explored by philosophy and spirituality, but what does science say about it? Recent studies reveal that spending time alone can have surprising benefits for the brain and mental health. Neuroscientists have discovered that moments of introspection activate brain networks responsible for creativity, decision-making, and emotional regulation. In other words, being alone, when used wisely, can strengthen the mind and enhance mental clarity. The problem is not solitude itself, but how we deal with it. Research from the University of Chicago indicates that intentional solitude reduces cortisol levels, the stress hormone, and improves emotional self-regulation. Another study published in Nature Neuroscience found that periods of isolation help the brain consolidate memories and process information more deeply. This explains why many people have their best insights when they are alone. Additionally, the absence of constant stimuli allows the brain to enter a state of active rest, which is essential for mental well-being. But how can this be applied in daily life? One practical way to harness the benefits of solitude is to create periods of mental rest, allowing the mind to reorganize itself without distractions. An effective method is the scheduled idleness technique, where at least 20 minutes a day are set aside to do nothing. Just observe one's own thoughts without external stimuli. Walking outdoors without a phone, engaging in reflective writing, or simply sitting in silence can help reduce stress and enhance mental clarity. Science is clear. Learning to be alone is a powerful skill that directly impacts the quality of life. Solitude is not just a moment of introspection, but also a gateway to deeper states of consciousness. Psychologist and neuroscientist Jacobo Grinberg dedicated his life to studying the mind and human perception, and one of his greatest discoveries was the relationship between solitude and the expansion of consciousness. He believed that when the brain is not bombarded by external stimuli, it can access a much larger field of information, a level of perception that transcends everyday reality. Grinberg developed the neural field theory, which suggests that all reality we experience is shaped by the interaction between our mind and a universal information field. According to him, it is in silence and isolation that we can perceive this connection more clearly. This explains why many people have transformative experiences during spiritual retreats, deep meditation practices, or prolonged moments of solitude. When we step away from the distractions of the world, we create space for a type of knowledge that cannot be accessed in any other way. In practice, this means that periods of solitude can be used as tools to expand perception. A simple exercise based on Grinberg's studies is mindfulness training, where a person sits in a quiet place, closes their eyes, and tries to perceive not only their thoughts, but also subtle sensations in their body and surroundings. The longer one practices this conscious observation, the more they notice patterns of thought and emotions that previously went unnoticed. This type of experience can lead to greater mental clarity, profound insights, and a sense of connection to something greater. When someone spends enough time in silence, something curious happens. Small coincidences begin to appear. Suddenly, a phrase overheard by chance answers an internal question. A number repeats frequently, or an unexpected opportunity arises at just the right moment. For traditional science, this may seem like mere chance, but Jacobo Grinberg believed that these coincidences are part of something much greater, the universe's way of communicating through synchronicities. The concept of synchronicity, also studied by Carl Jung, suggests that seemingly unrelated events may actually be interconnected by a higher intelligence. And what role does solitude play in this? When the mind is cluttered with distractions, these signals go unnoticed. But when a person allows themselves moments of solitude, their level of perception expands. Synchronicities become more evident because the mind is no longer focused on external noise, but rather on the subtle messages that life constantly presents. This can be applied in a practical way. Those who want to identify patterns of synchronicity can start by keeping a journal of unusual events that occur throughout the day, especially those that seem to carry a meaningful message. Another effective technique is the exercise of conscious intention. Before sleeping or upon waking, mentally ask a question to the universe and observe if answers unexpectedly appear throughout the day, in conversations, songs, or even dreams. Small details that once seemed irrelevant may actually be part of a larger dialogue between the mind and reality. There is a significant difference between being alone by choice and feeling isolated. Healthy solitude is a space for self-discovery and growth, while forced isolation can lead to feelings of abandonment and disconnection. The problem is that many people confuse these two states, believing that any withdrawal from the external world is negative. But the key to transforming solitude into something enriching lies in how it is experienced, by conscious decision or as an unwanted consequence of separation. Isolation, when unintentional, can create a sense of emptiness and sadness because there is no conscious purpose in the experience. This is the case for those who withdraw out of fear of relationships, past traumas, or external circumstances that prevent socialization. Conscious solitude, on the other hand, is different. It is time intentionally set aside for personal growth, where a person learns to find joy in their own company. It's the difference between someone who chooses a spiritual retreat to reconnect with themselves and someone who feels excluded from social life. To transform solitude into something positive, it is essential to fill it with meaning. Creating daily rituals can be an effective way to build a healthy relationship with these moments. Some practical examples include setting time aside to learn something new, journaling about emotional states, or simply practicing a hobby without the need for company. The secret is not to see silence as a problem, but as an invitation to strengthen the connection with oneself. Those who learn to enjoy their own presence will never fear being alone again. Few experiences have the power to reveal as much about a person as solitude. When someone steps away from the noise of the world and finds themselves without distractions, they begin to uncover aspects of themselves that previously went unnoticed. Old thoughts resurface, behavior patterns become more evident, and long-buried desires start to gain strength. This process can be uncomfortable at first, but that's exactly where its importance lies. Real self-knowledge only happens when we look inward without filters. Great thinkers and spiritual masters have always valued periods of solitude as an essential part of human growth. Socrates once said that an unexamined life is not worth living, and Jacobo Grinberg believed that it is in silence that we access the true nature of consciousness. When we allow ourselves moments of introspection, we can recognize the beliefs that shape our worldview, identify automatic behavioral patterns, and understand what truly matters to us. This level of awareness transforms how we make decisions, leading us to act based on what genuinely represents us rather than external expectations. To use solitude as a tool for self-knowledge, it is important to develop habits that encourage this process. Writing about emotions, questioning thought patterns, or simply spending a few minutes a day reflecting on past and future decisions can lead to profound changes. Another powerful practice is meditation, which helps us observe how the mind works without constant external interference. Those who commit to this kind of practice discover something invaluable. No one is more qualified to guide their life than their own consciousness. Solitude is not a void to be filled, but a space to be explored.